How's it going, everyone? This is Rosalind, and today we're going to be taking on the Dark Espers ultimate encounter. And this counter, it's difficult, but I would say it's actually more of a puzzle than anything. The puzzle being figuring out how you deal with the hybrid attack that comes every 5 turns. And to that end, this is how I have my party set up. As you can see with my Espers, I have made sure to include both Phoenix and Leviathan. These are for the missions. I gave Ifrit to Satan. This is to help with taking out Ifrit later on in the fight. And then I also have Siren on Noctus, and this is for the elemental resistance buff that she provides. Now taking a look at Bosh, Bosh is my magic tank. Throughout the majority of the fight, you're going to be getting a lot of magic damage every single turn in the form of fire, water, and dark magic, and he is set up to be able to have over 140% in each of those, and this is because you get a 40% elemental resistance debuff placed on your characters. The other important thing I have on him is Bad Breath. This Bad Breath is to basically give me an extra AoE dispel throughout the fight, so I can basically speed up the fight because the bosses are going to be buffing themselves all the time, and the fight would take forever if you don't do this. So here's his elemental resistances. Okay, and then I have Bart. Now, Bart is also set up to have high elemental resistances, and I've also given him Calamity Border, and this is a good time to explain why elemental resistances on all your characters, including your tank, is so important. So if we'll go here and look at Bart's elemental resistances, you can see that both fire, water, wind, and dark are all there, and the reason I say wind is because the hybrid attack that happens every 5 turns, whenever Dark Siren and Dark Ifrit are alive, it deals fire, water, wind, and dark damage. And in order to survive this attack, you need to have 400% resistance, 400% combined resistance. So if you take your fire resistance, your water resistance, your earth resistance, and your dark resistance, and you add those all up, and you get 400%, you will take no damage from this attack. If it's below 400%, you will probably die to this attack. They both use it, and it chains, and it can be like a 30 chain or something ridiculous like that. You basically have to absorb it. Now, you can use in-battle buffs, and my party is set up to accommodate that. That is the reasoning for Calamity Border. So every single character in my party is set up such that with Calamity Border, as well as with Foca's 100% water resistance, they are all over over the 400% threshold of the combined 4 elements. The other important thing for Bart in this fight is basically using this move right here. This is AoE Mirage, and this is to deal with Ifrit's AoE physical attack that happens every single turn except for the hybrid turns. And the way I'm going to be dealing with this fight is killing Ifrit before I pass 60% on his health bar, because after 60% he deals his AoE attack twice every turn, and this party can't survive that. As for my main damage dealer, I will be using Satan, and this is how I have him set up. The only difference with him from my initial kill is I swapped out Bird Killer for the King Leo Super Trust Mastery. This was just to speed up the video here, but I initially used Bird Killer, and that was to speed up Siren, because even without Bird Killer, 2 Satans, which is what I'll be using, is plenty DPS to take out Ifrit from even 70%. He is, or as you can see, he also meets the elemental resistance requirements to hit 400%. And then I have Foca. Foca is really the MVP here. This is how I have her set up. I gave her Dispel. I didn't end up using it, but I kind of just wanted to have an extra character that had access to Dispel. And again, she also has the elemental resistance requirements. Now, the reason Foca is so important for this fight, or so good for this fight, is if we come and look at her abilities, she has a number of abilities here that are great. First, the aforementioned 100% water resistance buff. This is great for surviving the hybrid. She also can buff both Charm as well as Stop, and both of those are used by Siren. And then when you're going for the kill on Ifrit, you can go ahead and use Aqua Riser in order to give another 70% additional water resistance debuff onto Ifrit. One thing I should have mentioned about Bart is I actually use Bart for the kill. Also, I use his limit break right before I go for the kill to put a 70% defensive debuff on Ifrit as well. And then I have Noctus. And this is how I have Noctus set up. He is a provoke tank to provoke the single target physical attacks from Ifrit throughout the fight, and he is set up for 100% dodge, as well as hitting the necessary 400% elemental resistance threshold. Now, I also did give him the Gilgamesh Trial materia. This, again, was for, the thinking behind this is to give another character in my party the ability to use Dispel. Unfortunately, I also give him a Thunder element weapon in order to meet the mission requirement for dealing thunder damage 6 times, which means until Siren is dead, I cannot use the AoE Dispel with him. Otherwise, I will trigger Siren's counterattack, which is a very, very nasty Thunder Wind attack. But all the physical damage throughout the fight only comes from Ifrit, so this actually works out well, giving Noctis a Thunder weapon, because he'll just naturally counter throughout the fight and get that mission done for you. Alright, and that is the party I decided to go with, so let's move on to the actual encounter. Okay, here we are for the fight. I'm actually recording the audio for this after the fact, so just be aware that it may not be entirely synced up. Now, for this first turn here, we're going to go ahead and put up all of our buffs. The Mirage, Cover, Noctis's Provoke, as well as Charm and Stop Protection with Foca. With the 2 Satans, I will also be putting up their solo buff, the one that gives them triple attack, and using their Fire ability, which will be the main ability that we are going to be using against Siren. The reason for choosing Fire over any of his other abilities is because you can actually chain 2 fire attacks to deal more damage to her. This is important because she's going to take the longest, probably because of all the debuffs that keep them, or all the buffs that keep them placed on them that will occasionally dispel, but not always. As well as the fact that she is going to heal every 9 to 10 turns. I forget exactly what it is. It's like first heals on turn 9, I think the other one's on turn 20 after that. But it heals for 5 million and really extends the length of the fight. As you can see here, I just used Bad Breath with Bosh, and that was to put up some extra dispels so we can get a little bit more damage here. That's the main reason I have him with Dispel, or with the Bad Breath, is so he can contribute to the helping to dispel buffs in order to just speed up the encounter, really. I have also switched Foca over to MP management here, since we've already got up the primary buffs that we're really worried about at this point. And here you're getting a look at how Noctis is countering. This is exactly what I was talking about in the explanation of my party and characters. He's countering against Ifrit, and that is providing the mission requirement. This really is just a exercise in repetition. You really just do the same thing for 4 turns, and then your 5th turn is basically the same, and then you go back to repeating that until Siren falls. Now, it should be noted that while this generally should take no damage, this particular party setup and gear setup, if your Bosh or whoever you use as your cover tank decides not to cover or misses one of the single target magic attacks, then it will hit your Noctis. It shouldn't kill him, but it can happen. Just keep that in mind. And now we're doing our turn 4 here, but once Ifrit and Siren get their turn 4, Ifrit is going to be very nice to us, and he's going to go ahead and dispel our party. Now, normally this would not be a good thing, however, we currently have a bunch of elemental resistance debuffs on our party, and we're about to go into a attack on turn 5 where we need to have 400% buffed resistance to 4 different elements, so we don't want those, and he helps us out here. But because we got dispelled, we need to go ahead and put up the proper things, and instead of using the Mirage, we are using a Calamity Border, and then I'm also making sure to put up Foca's 100% water resistance buff, and this makes sure that at least all my party members are at the 400% threshold. Now my friend Satan is not, so he is actually going to die here, but the rest of my party will survive. And there's the hybrid attack that I've talked about. This happens every 5 turns. However, once Siren is dead, it will not happen. And now, as you can see here, I am reviving my friend with Noctis. And I'm making sure that I revive him first, that way when I reapply buffs, the friend also gets those buffs. And because I won't be chaining, instead of using the fire attack, I'll just be using non-elemental attacks here with my Satan. And now everything basically resets, and we are good until turn 10, when at the end of turn 4 we'll get dispelled again, and turn 10 we will go ahead and survive. And I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and show up to turn 10, and then once that happens I will go ahead and cut the video until Siren is about to fall, since literally it's just doing this over and over and over again until Siren dies. As you can see there, on turn 9 there was the heal for 5 million. And here we get dispelled again, and then we are going to go ahead and just repeat the previous turn, the turn 5, for this turn 10, putting up Calamity Border and the water resistance buff so that we survive the hybrid attack. And again, making sure to rebuff, cover, and provoke. And just like last time, we will go ahead and revive my friend Satan before rebuffing, then we will rebuff, and we'll be back to the same cycle. So, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and push forward until Siren is about to fall. Okay, and as you can see here, we are getting close to the end of taking out Siren. What is that? 6%. This isn't going to kill her, I believe. I don't get her until after this next hybrid goes off, but it's not going to be too long now, or too much longer now. Should mention that if you're going to do the missions, for this recording I didn't do the missions, the Esper missions. You would just use a free turn, like one of the free turns where you're either healing with using MP heal with Foca in my case, or if you're dispelling with Bosh. Instead of doing one or the other, you would just use the respective Espers just to get those out the way. The fight's plenty long enough that you're actually able to get all the Esper stones before you take on Ifrit, and I do recommend doing it before you take on Ifrit because Ifrit can be a little bit scary. Even though you should technically not be taking any damage, he can very quickly get out of hand if anything goes wrong, and I will be taking a few precautions to make sure that doesn't happen. But here we're just going to go ahead and revive our friend Satan, put up our buffs, and go ahead and transition. Now it should be noted that once you transition, I may have already said this, but the hybrid will stop coming. It only comes whenever the two of them are alive, so everything will be just as if you were doing turns 1 through 4. The only difference is Ifrit will still dispel you, but I believe the dispel comes a little bit faster. I could be wrong on that. He will also place stats debuffs on your party members, but the stat debuffs aren't that big of a deal. It's only like 35%. If you're really worried before you go for the kill, you can just use Foca to remove the attack debuff on your characters. I don't even bother doing it, but you can do that. It's not that big of a deal. But as you can see, Siren's dead here. So now Ifrit's going to get a lot more powerful. He's going to inherit a lot of the abilities from Siren, and he gets very dangerous here. Because of this, I'm going to try to keep him dispelled as much as possible, because I'm going to be attacking him. And whenever you attack Ifrit, he does counter, and the counter comes before any of your end of turn effects happen. And if that counter gets through cover, it will kill Noctus in one hit. So if he's not dispelled, so I will try to keep Ifrit dispelled as much as possible, just in case that is happening. I will also switch over to using water with my two Satans, because that is what Ifrit is weak to. And whenever Ifrit buffs himself with a water resistance buff, I will either dispel it or use a different attack that turn. Now, if you're doing this, you don't want to deal too much damage to Ifrit in one turn. If you deal 20% or more of his HP in one turn, he will retaliate with stronger attacks the following turn. You also, at least with this strategy, do not want to push below 61%. Once you push below 61%, then Ifrit will start using his AoE physical attack that he uses every turn. He'll start using that twice a turn, and obviously Bart's Mirage only lasts for one attack, so that'll basically instantly wipe your party if you let that happen. You want to be careful that that doesn't happen. And now it's just a matter of biding our time until three things I'm waiting for here to line up. I'm waiting for the damage resistance buffs that are placed on Ifrit to fall off, and then I'm also waiting for the cooldown on the Satan's ability to give them 250% attack, as well as give them triple attack. And I'm also waiting for Ifrit to dispel my party. Once all those three things are lined up, I will be going for the kill. Essentially what will be happening is I'll wait until Ifrit dispels my party, and then the turn I get dispelled, I will then use the buffs on Satan and do everything as usual, and then the following turn I will go ahead and dispel the boss. I will use Bart's Limit Break to put a debuff, 70%, or maybe it's 74%, I forget, but put a defensive debuff on Ifrit, and then I will use Aqua Riser with Foca to put an extra 75% water resistance debuff on Ifrit, and then I will kill him in one turn. I will be doing it from, I believe, like 67%, but you can go as low as 61%, just don't push to 60%. Anything, whatever you do, you will die if you're using my current strategy here. And I do believe at one point here, the buff falls off, the damage resistance buff that Ifrit has, and I actually choose to use the weaker version of Satan's water attack in order to not push too far, and that's, I believe, what I use to push from the 70s into the 60s on his HP bar. Again, here you see me dispelling this time, as opposed to when I was doing it with Siren in order to speed up the fight. I am doing it here as a precautionary measure. As you can see there, he had a water resistance buff on him, so I believe I dispelled that with Noctus this time. And it's safe to do that now because Siren is gone, so you don't have to worry about getting counterattacked. If you're not using your Noctus in order to do the thunder damage 6 times mission, then you can use that in the first part of the fight if he's not using a thunder weapon. As you can see here, like I said, I used the two times weaker versions of Satan's water attack, just so I didn't push the boss too far. If I had used his bigger attack there, I would have pushed him below 60%, and that would have wiped my party. And here's the Dispel. So because I received this Dispel, I will be setting up to go for the kill next turn. The only thing really for setup for this turn is to use the Satan's buff on themselves. And that will be all I'm using here. And then obviously rebuffing everything due to being dispelled. And the reason I wait to do it here is just so, because even after Dispel, you'll still retain the triple attack, but I want to also maintain the 250% buff as well, which is why I wait till after I get Dispelled in order to do this. And I go ahead and dispel here. There's really no need to, but I'm going to do it anyways. And I'll also be using, like I said, Bart's Limit Break to put a defensive debuff on the boss, as well as Aqua Riser to increase to add another layer of the water resistance. Ifrit already has a 300% water resistance, or minus 300% water resistance, but this will make it minus 375%. It allows for a very easy kill from this HP range. And that's the fight. If you have any questions, do let me know. I know the whole mechanic with surviving the hybrid can be pretty confusing, and I may not have explained it well enough, so do let me know if you have any questions on it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.